Just after midnight, on the 2nd of March, 1354, the walls of a city called Gallipoli came down. There was no army at the gates, there was no siege. The earth shook for less than a minute, and 1,000 years of Roman defenses simply collapsed into the dark. By morning, an Ottoman commander named Suleiman Pasha had moved his men inside. He sent word across the Dardanelles to his father Orhan, the second sultan of a still tiny dynasty, that they had taken a European city without spending a single arrow. This was not an Ottoman victory. It was an Ottoman accident, and the story of how they ended up close enough to walk through that wall starts 28 years earlier with a Byzantine emperor who hired Orhan as his ally and gave him his daughter in marriage. In the year 1326, the Byzantine commercial city of Bursa surrendered to the Ottomans. The chronicle written by Ashok Pashazadeh, the same chronicle that gave us Osman's dream a generation ago, tells us that Osman heard of Bursa's fall on his deathbed and died satisfied. Modern historians, including Halil İnalcık, place his death 2 years earlier, in 1324. Either way, the man who actually walked through the gates was his son. Orhan was, by then, around 45 years old. He was not a young heir come into a sudden inheritance. He had spent his adult life on the frontier, and he would now spend the next 36 years consolidating what his father had taken. What he did first was move his court into a Byzantine city. For the first time, the Ottomans had a capital. They were no longer a tribe with tents. They were a state with stone. Everything Orhan built for the next 20 years was an announcement. Money, stone, scholarship. Each of his firsts was a public declaration to neighboring rulers. I am no longer anyone's vassal. In 1329, the Byzantine Emperor Andronikos III led a relief army east to free the city of Iznik, once Nicaea, the city of the First Ecumenical Council. Orhan met him at a place called Pelikanon. The emperor was wounded in the fighting and pulled from the field by his own men. The Byzantine state never tried to hold Asia again. Iznik fell in 1331. Its great basilica, older than the Hagia Sophia in Constantinople, became a mosque. Izmit, the old eastern capital of Diocletian's Roman Empire, fell in 1337. By 1345, the neighboring Beylik of Kheresi had been absorbed partly by conquest, partly by intermarriage, partly by Kheresi's own commanders defecting to the stronger neighbor. With Kheresi came a fleet. The Ottomans now stood on 2 coasts, and then came the 3 declarations. The first was the Akçe silver coin, struck in Orhan's name. Money is the most public thing a sovereign does. Other rulers in Anatolia and the Aegean now had to decide whether to accept Ottoman silver in trade. Most did. The second was the Orhan Gazi Mosque in Bursa, completed in 1339. Wood is occupation. Stone is annexation. The mosque said, "This Christian city is now mine, permanently." The third was the Medres at Iznik. Before Orhan, the Anatolian Turks had studied law and theology in Konya, in Cairo, in Baghdad. The first Mudaris, Davud of Kayseri, was now appointed to teach inside a former Byzantine monastic complex in a conquered city. I am no longer anyone's pupil. A coin, a mosque, a college, each of them a sentence addressed to the world. While Orhan was striking his coins and laying his stones, a stranger from the other end of the Muslim world was walking toward Bursa. We know his name. He was 28 years old. He had been on the road for 7 years already, from Tangier across North Africa, Egypt, Mecca, Iran. He had crossed deserts and seen empires, and he is going to be our first witness. His name was Ibn Battuta. He met Orhan in Bursa around the year 1331, ate at his table, and wrote about him in the only contemporary outsider account we have of any early Ottoman ruler. This is what he says. He is the greatest of these kings of the Turks, the wealthiest in money, lands, and military forces. He possesses nearly 100 fortresses, and he never sleeps in any city for a full month. He is constantly visiting them, examining them, putting their conditions in order. Sit with what that paragraph proves. The first episode of this series ended with a dream, the dream of Osman, and with a painful admission. We do not know if the man at the center of the founding myth existed the way the chronicles describe him. 25 years later, the picture is different. A traveler from Morocco sat across from Orhan, wrote his name, counted his fortresses, watched him refuse to spend a full month inside any one of them because that was the kind of ruler he was. The Ottomans were no longer a story being told about themselves. They had become a state that strangers wrote home about. And what comes next will be told entirely by witnesses. The next great witness was Byzantine. His name was John VI Cantacuzénos, and he wrote 4 books defending the things he was about to do. In 1341, the Byzantine Emperor Andronikos III, the same man Orhan had wounded at Pelikanon a decade earlier, died. He left behind a 9-year-old son and a court at war with itself. The chief minister, the regent, was Cantacuzénos. The boy emperor's mother had her own faction. Within months, they were fighting a civil war for the throne of what was left of the Roman Empire. Cantacuzénos needed soldiers. The Byzantine army had not been a serious force for 50 years. He looked east, across the Sea of Marmara, and he saw the only Muslim ruler whose troops had defeated the empire in living memory. He wrote to Orhan and asked for an alliance. Orhan said yes, and he asked for a wife. In 1346, in the city of Salimbria on the Sea of Marmara, Cantacuzénos married his daughter Theodora to Orhan in a state ceremony. He describes it himself in his histories. The Byzantine bride was led from the imperial pavilion. Eunuchs and priests escorted her. Orhan, who was already in his 60s, did not attend in person. He received her in Bursa. And according to her father's account, she remained a Christian inside the Ottoman court for the rest of her life. The Ottomans were not yet, in 1346, a state that demanded conversion. For 6 years, the alliance worked. Ottoman troops crossed the Dardanelles repeatedly to fight on Cantacuzénos's behalf in Thrace. They were paid. They went home. Then, in 1352, an Ottoman force under Orhan's son Süleyman Pasha, and this is not the famous Süleyman of 2 centuries later, this is Süleyman Pasha, the eldest son and presumed heir Süleyman Pasha, took a small Byzantine fort on the Gallipoli Peninsula called Tsimpe. He did not give it back. Cantacuzénos sent envoys. He sent silver. He sent letters. The Ottomans replied every time that the fortress had been taken in war and would not be returned in peace. And then, just after midnight, on the 2nd of March, 1354, the earth shook beneath the Dardanelles. The walls of Gallipoli came down. The Greek population fled the aftershocks. Süleyman Pasha walked his men in. Cantacuzénos sent a final, desperate envoy. "Please leave. We will pay you. This is unacceptable." The Ottomans replied in his own quoted words, "God has given us this city. We will not give it back." Within 10 months, John VI Cantacuzénos resigned the throne and entered a monastery. He spent the next 25 years writing his history's 4 books, in his own voice, defending every choice he had made. He never quite explains how it ended this way. 3 years after Gallipoli fell, in 1357, Süleyman Pasha, the man who had walked through that broken wall, died in a hunting accident at Bolier, near the Dardanelles. He was thrown from his horse. His tomb still stands. On a hilltop overlooking the strait, he was the first Ottoman to permanently cross. The succession passed to Orhan's younger son, Murad, and Murad, as we will see, will turn his father's open door into a road through Europe. In 1362, Orhan died in Bursa. He was, by the standards of his century, ancient, close to 80 years old. His father, Osman, had ruled for around 25 years and left a kingdom of tents. Orhan had ruled for 36 years and left a state of stone with a treasury, a coinage, a capital, a college, and an army already standing on European soil. The historians who have studied this period most closely, Donald Nickel on the Byzantine side, Halil Inalcik and Seymal Kafadar on the Ottoman side, argue that the moment Europe lost its Asian frontier was not 1326, when Bursa fell. It was not 1331, when Iznik became Ottoman. It was not 1354, when the earthquake took the wall. It was 1346. The marriage at Salimbria. The day a Byzantine emperor decided to bring the Ottomans inside the geometry of European politics, and trusted that the empire he served could absorb them. It could not. His father had ruled a kingdom of tents. Orhan died in a city, with a son ready to wear the title Sultan and an army already standing on European soil. He had not invaded Europe. He had been invited. Next Monday, Murad I, the son who turns the door his father walked through into a road, and the question the chronicles never quite answered. Why did a Christian king